Before we start this video, I'd like to apologize in advance of why this video didn't come out a day before. See, something unexpected happened, like I had to take a 3-hour shift or something, so I really couldn't help but do the shift anyways, because if I didn't, I probably would disappoint someone anyways though. So if you're wondering why this video came out late, I do apologize in advance for that. And the next videos I'll be doing are going to be either Magical Girl related or something around my live streams. Though admittedly, the Magical Girl streams are probably going to be more than they are though. So if you ever ask how many Magical Girl shows they are, I think it's around, say 14 or 15 by the time I'm making this video. But I still have some I've yet to finish and others yet to watch. So I hope in advance that this video will do anything to make that up. And as far as I'm aware, I don't know when the next live stream will be up. I think around the latest will be around October 21st, around my 26th birthday, but we'll have to soon see. Now with all that said, on with the video. Hello everybody, it's I, Flamingo Writer here, back again for another video. So, Magical Girl shows. It's no secret that I love Magical Girl shows, even to this day. Yeah, call me a woman child, but what I love about Magical Girl shows personally is how much you can do so much with them. For a while, you can pretty much bet that they can do anything to diving into the aspects of that anyways though, or sometimes parodies. Whether you like Magical Girl shows or not, you can't deny the impact that this genre has had before though. And honestly, that's one of the reasons why I'm going to do Magical Girl show for my channel. Yeah, needless to say, that Magical Girl shows mean a lot to me. In fact, I go so far as to say it's my favorite genre out there though. And while I do admit that Magical Girl shows will always be a norm to me, I can't help but express the love I've always had for them though, ever since I was a teenager, and still loving them even to this day. And that's what they always have been for me. Except when they don't. Yeah, I'm not going to mince words and say that just because I have a favorite genre that you can reinvent in its own formula, that does not mean that I'll always love all of them. There are going to be some stinkers out there, and sometimes it can be part of this execution. But there's sometimes even, I'll admit, Magical Girl shows can be one or the other for some time though. In this case, adult animation. I know what some of you guys are thinking. Adult animation? What's wrong with that? Now, I personally don't have anything against adult animation because I've seen a handful of them that I can at least call my favorites. And I don't have the time or need to go over them. I mean, I do have favorites I could go over, but if I did that, we'd be here all day. But I'm saying this as in someone who actually doesn't mind adult animation. I mean, don't get me wrong, there are a lot of shows that can be replica, trying to be all Family Guy or Simpsons or hell, even South Park on occasion. But the problem with it, maybe it's because I'm too sensitive. I just don't really have that much to go over with adult animation. And what's more, some of them can be mean-spirited in their own ways. And maybe it's just me, but I personally think animation for adults, along with Magical Girl shows, can at least work for some decency. Or maybe that's just me being out of loop as always. Adult animation can work for some people, but even I'll admit it's basically some things I've seen before. It's either sitcoms or sci-fi, or what we're looking at today, Magical Girl Friendship Squad, is anything but. But truth be told, I've always wanted to talk about Magical Girl Friendship even before I started my channel long already. Yeah, this is a common recurring theme, but honestly, I've always wanted to talk about this series in detail of what I think about it. But the problem with it is that I personally could not get myself invested in not just Magical Girl Friendship Squad, but for the backstory behind it. And that's not from lack of trying either, though. Well, honestly, I guess there's no other choice but to talk about the show itself and see why so many people have talked about before now, and say why it's not anywhere near the Magical Girl aspect we had yet to come. But before we get into the show itself though, I think it's only fitting if we talk about the history behind this show. Stalling? Maybe, but I thought I might as well give you guys a little background of it before we get started. Technically, the show didn't really start out as a show itself right away. It actually aired as a pilot from a web pilot, from the web series, and honestly, Magical Girl Friendship Squad Origins was already picked up, but for some reason they decided to pick it up from Sci-Fi of all places, which I'm not so sure why Sci-Fi of all places decided to pick it up, but okay. If you're not familiar with Sci-Fi, though, the closest thing I can at least say, because honestly I don't blame if you don't know anything about it, because I never grew up with this here network. Sci-Fi is mostly known for having a lot of, well, science fiction network shows that used to air on there, though. The only things I've seen in my 20s when I first started seeing this network on TV were basically reruns of Futurama and reruns of Mystery Science Theater 3000. But considering that those shows were actually on sci-fi related stuff, I'm not so sure why Magical Girl Friendship Squad decided to pick it up on here, though. Maybe it's because they thought there was science fiction related stuff I haven't seen in there. I don't really know. Also, can I just say for the record, the only reason why I'm talking about this show is because Manga Comment of all people talked about this show way before I did, though. I mean, this was before I started my channel, even if I did have my own channel back then, but still, you get what I mean. But enough stalling. Let's talk about the show itself. Well, I say that, but you're not going to get much from the show just based off of its premise alone. We start off with our main protagonists, Alex and Daisy, who are nothing more than just slackers, who are basically talking New York talk, because the first scene we ever see, and since I can't show you because YouTube hates me when I show clips every now and then, I don't know why, it's here where we meet our characters who happen to be, well, who do you think you are? I'm walking here, or some shit like that. You know, I would say that this is New York talk, but as someone who knows a personal somebody who is from New York, I'm just gonna leave it at that if it's either offensive or funny, but to me, I'm just saying it's the latter for which of it's worth, though. And to be fair, Alex and Daisy have a reason to be so pissed off because they didn't pay their landlord on time. Wah, wah. You know, I hate to be that person, but if you don't pay your rent on time, I have to wonder why the hell do you even bother living in an apartment all this time? Or worse, yeah, why don't you just go back to your families? Unfortunately, they can't go back to their families because after Daisy has the right to flick off this landlord. Yeah, because I'm pretty sure you don't get kicked out, though. Yeah, I'm not kidding when I say this, but they don't get kicked out. They stumble upon someone who actually meets them right inside the apartment. How did he get in the apartment? In the apartment, your guess is as good as mine. And it's here where we meet this red panda named Nut, who Alex somehow mistakes for a raccoon. How do you mistake a red panda for a raccoon? I mean, seriously, I get they have stripes and somewhat of a mask on their face, but come on now, that's low. Also, for a red panda, Mei Ling, I think you may have went to the wrong scenery. Your movie is that away. Actually, this is Nut, or as she originally wanted to call herself was Isis, which I'm not sure which is a worse name, but you take the pick. And yeah, this is apparently our mascot character for the evening, and wouldn't you know it, she's here to tell our two heroines for the evening to basically say that they're magical girls to stop the universe from killing humans from doing so. And as you can guess, they take it nonchalantly. Yeah, I'm just gonna come out and say it. I'm guessing that they're trying to be all slacker behavior and stuff like that, but for some two girls who are supposed to be guardians of this here galaxy, it's like the creator wanted to show something that's magical girl related, but I'm just gonna come out and say it. You're not doing a good job at it. Actually, come to think of it, when they come across as magical girls, I have to come across and ask one thing. Why do these two, Alex and Daisy, have to be the one to protect the galaxy or universe of all things? I mean, if this show is supposed to be a parody of the Magical Girl formula, I could give it a little more leeway because I have talked about Magical Girl parodies before now. Q High Earth Defense Club and Magical Ore, both of which are shows that can be hit or miss for some people, but I think the latter of which did so much better than what these two can do, though. But you may have noticed, the only reason why I brought those two up is because while they were parodies, at least you actually understood where the parody was going for, and even one who's never been a fan of the magical formula actually knows how ridiculous it can be and still laugh along with it. Or maybe that's just a sense of humor talking. But here, not only do Alex and Daisy lack any sort of charisma, but I could not get invested in these characters. To put it as short as I can, the characters are not the greatest out there. I mean, seriously, I could not tell you how much I cannot stand these characters, regardless of that. Also, for some reason, the weapons they use are, well, Alex using a pack of birth control pills, and Daisy using a bong. Okay. And not also had the audacity to just use those by just finding them all for their shells after that, though. Okay, so just so you know, these here episodes, if you're gonna think that these drag on for so long, don't worry. They're only about 11 to 11.5 minute episodes, so you don't have to worry about its pacing being a problem if they were 22-minute episodes. But that begs the question, if this is supposed to be a magical girl show, then how come the writing itself is so poor? I could not tell you how much I couldn't get into. I shit you not. Most of the time, whenever I come across these here characters, the writers themselves just make it look like they're trying to make those one-liners that you can come up with at any time, though. But the way they're written here just makes me roll my eyes and say, do something about it then if you don't like it. Speaking of the characters, let's go over them. I guess we can start off with Alex, and to put it as bluntly as I can, I couldn't understand if I was supposed to like Alex or if I was supposed to find her annoying. Because honestly, the most I got from her is what you expect from a lot of these here characters that are black. You know what I mean. The sassy black character who has a big mouth for a lot of stuff, that doesn't know when to shut up except when time only needs to. She does have the dignity to actually try to find a job to pay off the rent though, which makes me wonder why she didn't do that earlier, but you do you, I guess. And at least she actually does seem up to it though. However, saving the world from being in danger, yeah, that's really out of the park as much as it is though. The writers just go so far as to use her as a black sassy chick for no other reason other than she's just one of those to be OP as hell though, and as well as say that the character herself just doesn't seem to look forward to that. Look, as much as I hate to admit it though, at least when it comes to magical girls, when they actually do have to save the universe, they at least try and do so already. They may fuck up at times, but at least they try doing it several times so they'll know what they're doing. Here though, you might as well say she at the beginning acts nonchalantly, but later on in the series for 6 episodes, because it should totally take 6 episodes in to at least understand what their motivation is, though, Alex decides to agree with it though. So, as you can tell, it comes off as little too late, and at least to me at the time though. Now I realize some people are going to say it's called a slow burn, but when you have 6 episodes, you can't be any slower than that though. And pacing is crucial if it wasn't obvious already. But that's fucking bananas compared to Alex's friend and to Daisy. And to put it as bluntly as I can, I cannot stand Daisy's character. Her whole gimmick got old to me very quickly after the first episode, and honestly, she's one of those characters who had a decency or the audacity to go so far as to flick off her landlord. And before you think it's supposed to be funny, I don't buy it. And honestly, she comes off as pretty lazy a lot of the time though. We do get to see her parents in one episode. Yeah, out of all the characters we have though, we have to have one character's parents come in but not the other. Maybe if the series had lasted longer, had better writing, maybe we could have had better material for her angstiness, but I wouldn't judge it though. Plus, even if that's true though, I cannot understand why her weapon and that had to be a bong of all things. And she says bong Selic? I wonder if that's a reference to something. Can you guys tell me in comments? Yeah, I think you guys already know the reference. But yeah, Daisy is just not that interesting. You know, it's so sad when I have to say Daisy's not that interesting, when I can think of a better Daisy to play when you think about it for even a second or two. And yes, I know Daisy's a common name, but you get what I mean. I personally feel like it would have been so much better if Daisy would have at least had the currency to actually do anything. But again, like Alex, they don't do anything for the universe until they start caring about it till near the last episode or at the very last episode. So again, what's the point? The only character I actually liked out of the 3 characters, however, is Nuts, and even then, that's not saying much. She's as bland as a piece of paper, but honestly, she's not as a bad character as you think, though. Kind of sad that you have to make the mascot character a lot more than they are, but that's beside the point. She does say at one point that they have to do their job as magical girls in order to do so, or guardians or whatever though. But anyways, I'm just sick and tired of this though. I mean, seriously. I mean, I don't have anything against magical girl mascots necessarily. Hell, a lot of them always give me the chance where I have to say a plushie. But even with that said, however, I personally could not get invested in this here character deeply. I mean, they do establish she does have a sister from another universe it was, but honestly, I care her not to think about it too hard though in of itself though. And really, that's all I have to say about the main heroes of this here story. But there are villains, and honestly, though, there are times when you have to throw in this is a magical girl, because you can't have a series without talking about magical girl. And I'm not shitting you when I say that, because one of the doctors or nurses or whatever almost looks identical to Usagi Drop, right down to the voice actress. And I don't care enough to talk about the voice acting for the voice actors part, because honestly it's really just raunchy in a lot of ways I could not express myself to go over. But I will say the nurse here herself, I'm just gonna call her a nurse because they don't really give her a name, looks like Usagi Drop, especially the voice who sounds exactly like Stephanie Sheh from the Viz Media dub of Sailor Moon. So yeah, let's make a Magical Girl show within a Magical Girl show to have a Magical Girl show in it. You know, Star Versus did this with Mina Loveberry, and at least while she did kind of look like Usagi Dropped in the same way, at least they never went so far as to get Stephanie Sheh to voice her to be so typical as it is, as flawed as Star Versus is, but that's beside the point. The only character I only gravitated on was probably the quote-unquote main villain, if you could call him that. Yeah, I say villain, but this guy doesn't even act like a villain or something like that. He goes on social media, which, yeah, that's very villainous of him to do that. What a shock. And, yeah, he is probably one of the more funniest characters I've seen in this show, and even then, that's not saying a lot. He's Cohen, and honestly, there's not much I can say about him. He does act villainous towards the girls and try to manipulate them into doing something, but he's just too damn funny at his job that I personally could not get into it, though. And speaking of being a villain, I do like his cape, though. That I will say, though. I just wish it was better animated, though. Speaking of the animation, I think we might as well talk about that before anything, because honestly, these characters are draining so much energy that I would talk about the main villain of the series, but I'm just gonna come out and say it. It's basically Kaguya from Naruto Shippuden, if there was no other way to say we have our main villain, but you can't to lead it up to anything. Yeah, I mean, let me just say this briefly before we get into the animation, but I'm just gonna say this right here and now. How hard is it to foreshadow a villain that is gonna come our way to screw our villains over? Seriously, I've seen this done about, say, what, 2 or 3 times already. Magical Girl Friendship Squad did this too, but there's also High Guardian Spice and cosplayers. What is with villains coming up at the very last episode? Couldn't you have some foreshadowing coming along the way? I guess to put in simple terms, the characters' animation style for the characters do look a lot better than the pilot. I mean, at least Daisy kind of looks a lot more feminine than she did in the pilot, where she looked more masculine than she did. But other than that, I don't care for this art style. Maybe it's because there's not much detail to it or something else, but even the outfits themselves remind me of Kill la Kill, a much better Magical Girl show I'd be watching. And I already talked about Kill la Kill if it wasn't obvious, though. But it's pretty clear to me that Magical Girl Friendship Squad's designs just don't seem all that intriguing to me. And let's talk about the weapons for a sec, because I personally feel like Magical Girl weapons are always my biggest niche when it comes to the girl. Now, I personally love Magical Girl weapons. There's so much you can do with them. Sure, these the obvious wands and batons and basically sometimes even necklace charms or anything like that, but considering as someone who gravitates on some Magical Girl shows, the weapons are always the ones I've always loved to see whatever girls can do with them. Hell, I can name a bunch of them at the top of my head that always intrigued me. Some stuff from, like, say, Sailor Moon, Cardcaptor Sakura, Mermaid Melody, and some others along the way, though. And before you ask, I know what you're thinking. It's supposed to be an anime adult series. They can't go all cutesy. And to that I say, why not? If anything, though, I think adults can at least enjoy something cutesy once in a while. Maybe it's because I'm a woman child who enjoys Magical Girl shows. Call me that all you want. But I still think the weapons could have been better made instead of what our heroines do have. You want to know what they have, as I alluded to earlier again? Again, go back to what I said. Alex and Daisy use birth control pills and a bong necessarily, though. I'm not sure if it's just me saying this, but why on God's green goddamn earth do you have to use birth control pills and a bong in order to go so far as to use those as weapons? Granted, Alex does do whatever she can to use her birth control pills, and Daisy just makes a mace out of her bong, which personally, I think a mace would have been so much better and useful to give a weapon instead of a freaking bong that you smoke weed out of, or whatever you call those things. I'm not so sure because I don't do 420. Actually, giving 420 to this here show is kind of a disservice, though. I'm not going to show it for obvious reasons, but if I did that, think that's what I have to say, though. Hell, even the weakest Magical Girl shows I can probably see for now is probably better weapons than I could ever hope to dream I would have, though. But by the end of the day, I think that's kind of the problem I have with Magical Girl Friendship as a whole, though. And it's a real shame too, because like I said, sometimes animation for adults, especially Magical Girl shows, are something that I personally would like to see in a Magical Girl show anyways though. But when it comes right down to it, Magical Girl Friendship Squad basically said, fuck it, you might as well just take whatever you can, bitches, and just run with it though. I guess what I'm trying to say is that it's one of those Magical Girl shows that you personally do feel like they had ideas with it, but they just never ran with those ideas. Here's what I mean by that. When it comes right down to it, Magical Girl shows have the tendency to reinvent them in their own way. Hell, you can say you can make witches, which as someone who reads Reddit once in a while, can I just say it's very stupid for them to say you can only make witches and only witches for Magical Girl shows, because I personally feel like you can still do so much with the Magical Girl formula. As I said in the Star Giant Productions campaign video, there is so much you could have done with this formula that you could have made it in your own way and still make it fun and creative by having a fresh coat of paint on it. But Magical Girl Friendship Squad didn't take that route. Instead, they just went so far to say it's an animation and series for adults, and that's all you have to say. And look, I'm not saying that I don't like Magical Girl shows and adult shows at the same time. Like I said, I could have had them both better if they had better writing for it, better characters to work with, and so much other stuff. Oh, and by the way, the big bad villain, you might as well just say, like I said earlier, Kaguya from Naruto Shippuden if there was no build-up. Then again, from what I've heard, there was no build-up for her character arc, so that's all there is to it though. But you know what's the sad thing for all of this? The sad thing is that I know there are some people out there that's asking for too much out of an adult show. But can I just say for the record, that's kind of the reason why I say that animation for adults should go have fun with their ideas. Look at something like Hazbin Hotel and The Amazing Digital Circus. Both of those shows are made for adults, yes, but at least they have fun with those ideas. Sure, the writing for the latter of which could have been better, i.e. Hazbin Hotel, but I'm saying this as in someone who's watched animation for adults as a kid, though. Yeah, kid me for some reason got away with that more than Magical Girl shows. Ha ha ha. The irony. But I don't say that as in being mean or anything. I get what some people are going to say. Magical Girl shows aren't going to appeal to everybody, and you know what? That's fair. Not everyone's going to be appealing to the same genre that you're into, and sometimes, if you're someone like me, you can reinvent it in your own way. Hell, why do you think I write stories about Magical Girl shows as in my own way for taking inspiration by it? I guess what I'm trying to say is that Magical Girl Friendship Squad had ideas, they just never find its full identity. And I hate saying that because, like I said, the show itself has ideas, but they just never went with those ideas. I personally would have liked it if the show was better written and better characters to deal with, but by the end of the day, it's just one of those shows that you're just gonna forget after you watch it. And you know what? I feel pretty bad for its creator, though. And you know what? Say what you want about creators getting their works out there. Some of them are going to be missed pieces. Some of them are going to have their people that are going to bash on them for saying something like that. And there's going to be criticism of it, though. But the thing is, though, having something like that shouldn't really stop you from trying more and more creativity. I mean, you should get your voice out there and try to express your own creativity. Isn't that part of what creativity is like? And I know I'm not one to speak, though. These people don't need me to talk about it. But by the end of the day, does it really matter? And you might be thinking this episode was just kind of pointless overall. I mean, watching Magical Girl Friendship Squad was kind of a tall word for me to watch anyways. Well, I wouldn't say it's the worst Magical Girl show in existence out there. I mean, I still think High Garden Spice took that formula to a whole new degree. But I don't think it's the worst of the worst I've seen on my channel. And before we, close off, I think it's only fitting if I tell you guys right here now, I'm probably going to be doing Magical Girl shows every week or every once a week, depending on how long the show will be, though. However, with the show I'm going to be doing next time, it's probably going to be coming out next week. Hopefully I don't get any distractions along the way, but that's what happens when you're a busy flamingo. You have your head in the water somehow. Yeah, I'm terrible, aren't I? But anyways, with all that said, thank you all so much for watching. See you all next time, and as always, stay flamingo-tastic. See you all next time.